All right, let's go ahead and get started today. A couple things to be aware of. First is that the first primary essays are due a week from tomorrow, so that's something to keep in mind. The other thing is that, well, I thought I'd pulled it up, but I didn't. The first exam is coming up 2 weeks from today. So the study guide for that is posted. So the study guide is posted on Blackboard. Only some of this material, of course, we have gotten to, but the rest of it we'll get to by the time the first exam comes around. So 2 weeks today, September 15th. The first part of the exam will be short answer multiple choice questions drawn from these 41 terms, covering the backgrounds the whole way through the 3rd century. With some of these, I've tried to give you some specifics about what exactly I'm looking for. But as you're preparing, if there's ever a question you have about what I'm looking for, feel free to get in contact with me about it. In general, I'm looking for you to be able to briefly describe these terms. So, for example, if you had 30 seconds to tell somebody about who Ignatius was, right? Who we'll talk about here in a little bit. That's what I'm wanting you to know, right? And so, what are some of the highlights? Consequences of Alexander's great contributions to Augustus' empire, characteristics of Greek and Roman religions. Essentially, those are lists, and those are lists that we went through in class. Same with the themes. The philosophies, the important Greek philosophies would be those that we discussed in class. Right? And so those are the ones I really want you to pay attention to. But something like the imperial cult, I just want you to be able to briefly describe what the imperial cult was. Worship of the emperor, required sacrifice, those kind of things.
Will you be putting the slideshows on Blackboard?
I'm not sure if I'll put the slideshows on Blackboard or not, but you can access the videos. And so you could go through it that way if you didn't have the notes from it. So the first half would be short answer multiple choice, again, kind of a general knowledge type of question. The second part will be an essay, a brief essay, probably about the size of a long paragraph. Will be based on one of these 4 topics. Well, essentially, I will create 2 questions out of these 4 topics. So let's say maybe one on politics and one on doctrine. And then you'll have your choice as to which one you want to write on. So you won't have to write. You only have to write one essay, but you'll have your choice of 2 possible ones. Not only should you pay attention to these specific topics, you should also think about what sort of lessons or warnings you can take from those things for today. Right? So there'll be a component there that asks you that might say something like, what lessons can we learn from these developments today? So don't just think about, all right, here's the scope of persecution across the political times. But also, what can we learn from some of those things that took place back then? What questions do you have? What do I need to clarify?
All right, I'd say it's going to be, you're going to take a question from that, and it's going to be like you put it up and say, how Christian practice changed? I mean, we have to write something about that. It'll be a question.
Yeah, it'll be a question.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you can discuss how Christian practice changed, you'll be in good shape to answer those questions. Other questions?
Like a summary, I know that you're going to do this, but the chapter summaries, how would you like to set that up?
I was going to talk about that in a minute here. Are there any other questions about the exam before we move on? Certainly, if anything comes up, by all means, get in contact with me about that. If you have any questions about the terms, or I can't find this in my notes, or something like that. The other thing that I wanted to mention was that the first set of summaries are due. They are due the day after the first exam, so the 16th, 2 weeks from tomorrow. Essentially, I forgot to put on here. Essentially, what you're to do is to summarize chapters, for the first section, chapters 3 through 9. One summary for each section. 250 words. And so at least 250 words about chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, right, the whole way to chapter 7. I've provided 2 examples for you to kind of see what I'm looking for. A summary of chapter 1 and chapter 2, which you don't have to do. They are shorter chapters, so that's why they might look a little shorter. The other chapters, 3 through 9, have plenty of material. 250 words shouldn't be a problem. But those are due 2 weeks from tomorrow. Now we'll adjust that so it says 250 words to remind you.
Question.
Yes.
On my blackboard, those are not available. Is that on purpose?
They should be. I can't give you. The examples are not available, or the
All 3.
Oh.
Only the primary source.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize. I mean, we're looking at the instructor view, but permit users to view this content, yes. Are you looking under, well, yeah, you were looking under assignments. Permit users to view this content. Make this assignment available, yes. Well, I don't know what's going on there, so I'll have to take a look at that after class, and I'll see.
Got 2 weeks.
Yeah. I'll get it to you before that. Any questions about the summaries? Don't forget the primary source essay on Justin Martyr, due a week from tomorrow. Or, no, a week from today, excuse me.
How long is the primary source essay?
500 words. Other questions? All right. Again, if something does come up, by all means, either stop by during office hours or send me an email or catch me before after class.
Dealing with the summaries, do you want to, can it be each chapter separate, or can I combine it all together?
Each chapter should be separate. Yeah, so you should have, and you can put it all in one file, that way it's easy to upload, but each chapter should have a separate summary. And if time, if you get going and time runs out, at least submit some, because each summary is going to be graded separately. So if there's for some reason you don't have 3 through 9, but you have 3 through 7, submit those. That way you'll at least get some points on the assignment.
It's just a summary, like opinions or anything like that.
No, just a brief overview of those chapter contents. So
As long as you put it in your own words.
yeah, put it in your own words. If you do quote anything, you shouldn't need to, but if you do quote anything like a phrase or something like that, put that in quotation marks, but you don't need a works cited page or anything like that. So put it in your own words. As a summary, of course, it should be a lot smaller than what the chapter is. All right, let's move on then into talking about the 2nd century. I'm thinking here now about now that we're in a period now where Jesus, of course, has ascended, the apostles have died, and so now the church is kind of left to make its way. When it comes to thinking about the politics of the time, a lot of what we can say about the political situation of second century Christianity is largely that of persecution or relationships with the state. As we'll see later on, once Christianity becomes the official religion, then they're having influence on the state in other ways. But predominantly right now, we're seeing the state act on Christianity. And we've talked a little bit about some of the persecution that took place under Nero, that had taken place under Domitian during the first century. Those were largely localized persecutions. It does not appear like it was an imperial policy across the empire to persecute Christians. But as we move into the second century, again, it's still fairly localized at times, but now the empire has gained a greater attention and awareness of Christianity. It's only throughout the first century that the empire gradually started to recognize Christianity as something separate from Judaism. When it was part of Judaism, a type of Judaism, it was offered the same kinds of protections that Jews had. Exemptions from certain state functions and sacrifices, some of the other protections that we talked about in earlier lectures. But gradually, more and more Gentiles become part of Christianity, and Jews themselves separate from Christianity because they're trying to distance themselves from Christians. So the empire starts to look upon Christianity as something distinct, meaning that it's not afforded the same kinds of protections that it was, because it's no longer a form of Judaism, it's something new. And so that leads to greater and greater attention. But one of the things that's also important to recognize about the persecution and the Roman attention at this time is that it varied dependent upon the emperor. Some emperors were more interested in Christianity and getting rid of Christianity, what Christianity was doing, how it was having an effect on the empire. Others didn't mind it and just kind of ignored it, so to speak. But for a lot of the second and third century, the policy that shaped the interactions with Christianity was that largely shaped by the Emperor Trajan. Trajan had become emperor after Domitian and extended his reign into the into the second century. In those early years, it doesn't appear that he really paid much attention to Christianity, and probably wouldn't have until he got a letter from a man named Pliny. Pliny the Younger, to distinguish him between another Pliny from ancient times. Pliny was governor of Bithynia, a region in modern-day Turkey. And one of the things that is important about this correspondence is that he writes to Trajan to determine what to do about Christians. He's kind of disturbed by Christians in his region. He's concerned about the effect that they have had in Bithynia. And so he's concerned about that. But he's also received a letter of supposed Christians. But it has been sent anonymously, right? It's just kind of, he's come across this list, doesn't know where it came from, but these are lists of supposed Christians. And so he gets into investigating this list and some other people that he's heard are Christians. And he's been essentially undertaking a certain examination of people, but he writes to Trajan to find out whether what he has been doing is the appropriate response or not. And so essentially he writes to Trajan saying, should I continue what I'm doing, or should I do something else? So he talks about his investigation in this letter and says, I investigated some of these people, and some people admitted to being Christians. And so those I punished. Now some of them he killed. Some of them he sent to Rome if they were citizens. Right? So Roman citizens, he has to send them on Rome. So there have been some people that he finds that are Christians, and they, yes, I'm a Christian. He finds some who are not Christians. Right? They've never really been Christians, and so that's not been an issue. But then he finds some who were Christians at one point, but had left Christianity. And so what he's done with those last two groups is, if you'll offer a sacrifice to the emperor and curse Christ, you're free to go. Right? Because he figures that, given what he knows about Christians, they won't do these things if they're truly Christians. And the people that have been apostates, have done that. And so he writes to Trajan wanting to know, do I continue this? But also wanting to know something else. Should I punish Christians only if they have committed crimes? Or is being Christian a crime itself? Right? And so I only pay attention to Christians if they have committed crimes, or is it a crime to be Christians? In both cases, he refers to Christians as just being, they're just stubborn. I mean, that's the one thing that you see throughout a lot of the second century with these Romans, is Christians are too stubborn. They should give up their way. They shouldn't be so exclusivistic. Right? They're just stubborn. They need to come to their senses. When Trajan responds, essentially he says that he doesn't want Pliny to bother taking the time to seek out Christians. Right? And so don't waste your time going to find Christians. But if someone is accused, give them the chance to recant. And if they refuse to recant, if they refuse to give up Christianity, then punish them. But if you get any more of these lists that are anonymous, ignore them. Right? And so he only wants situations where somebody is willing to say that person is a Christian, right? Willing to stand up and accuse somebody versus just kind of writing a note and saying, oh, by the way, this person is so and so, right? The John Smith is a Christian. Well, I guess it's Rome, so Jonathan Smith is a Christian. So if you're not willing to stand up, then ignore that. And that remains the imperial policy for a while. Don't bother seeking them out. But yeah, kind of that. But if it comes to your attention, then you have to handle it.